With the state of the world right now, I think we need more of this. I think we could use some fluffy. Hi guys, welcome. Today I wanted to give you some recommendations for what I would consider to be fluffy Valentine's Day romances. By fluffy, I in no way mean lacking in character or romantic development. These books are still gonna pack an emotional punch, but I would say that the overall vibe that I'm left with after finishing these books is, oh, that was so cute. I'm looking for books with like fun, witty banter. Maybe they have some sort of whimsical element or like small town charm. Something about it just makes me think cute, fluffy, happy thoughts. The first book I'm gonna recommend is Love Theoretically by Allie Hazelwood. Honestly, any of Allie Hazelwood's books would do, except for maybe the last three that she's gotten a little bit more experimental on. All of her books kind of have that fan fiction-y, fun banter, but also like very deep emotional connections and kind of like nerdy charm to them. But I'm choosing this one because I think it deserves more love. It's one of my favorites. Our main character is Elsie, and she's kind of the embodiment of the song Mirror Ball by Taylor Swift. She fake dates clients for money, and because of this, she's really good at kind of being a chameleon and changing her personality to fit whatever her clients need. But her academic rival, who also ends up being on the board of decision makers for this tenured position that she's trying to get as a professor at MIT, might be the first guy that really sees through all of that and sees her for who she really is. There was so much communication and respect in this book, and he continuously calls her out for being a people pleaser and is like, that's just not gonna work on me. And I don't know, I love books like this where the main character feels like truly seen for the first time, but none of that took away from like how steamy this book is as well. This one's just one of my favorites from her. Then we have Savor by DeWitt, which I don't actually own physically, but I want to because it was one of my top 10 romances from last year. But this is a romance between a burnt out chef and his very eclectic, people-pleasing neighbor who he moves next to with his niece, who he's the guardian of, when he's asked to go help create the menu for this new restaurant opening in this small town. But this is one where I thought the writing was so beautiful. I highlighted so many quotes in this book, and it deals with topics like burnout and, like I said before, chronic people pleasing and finding out what you really want out of life. But the banter and the setting and the charm in this book still make it feel lighthearted and fluffy, in my opinion. Similar to the Allie Hazelwood book, this one felt like a puzzle piece romance with two characters that really see each other for who they are and make each other better versions of themselves. Next, we have The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. This I read a few years ago, and I just remember having the best time with it, and I immediately, when I finished it, got all of my friends to read it as well. This one follows Hallie and Jack, who have a drunken one-night stand one night, and then when they match on a dating app later, they end up striking up a bet to see who can find the one first. But of course that doesn't work out, because after going on a series of very unsuccessful dates with other people, they end up striking up this kind of unconventional friendship, and then they're both kind of too scared to do anything about it because they don't want to ruin this friendship that they have going on. So it ends up kind of being friends to lovers. Lynn Painter just writes some of the best natural feeling, witty banter and chemistry between characters, in my opinion. I always have the best time reading her books, and I was laughing out loud every 5 minutes reading this. I just think this one captures that giddiness and bubbliness of falling in love with a best friend, but it also doesn't feel cheesy or cringy, which is something I kind of have a hard time with fluffy romances sometimes. Like love confessions that are too dramatic and grand sometimes feel really cringe to me. Her books don't give me that. Then I have On the Same Page by Hailey Kass, which also ended up in one of my top 10 romances of the year. This one is available on KU. This one's best friends to lovers, and it's a sapphic romance between two people who met in college, and it's told in dual timelines. So you're getting to simultaneously watch their friendship develop back in college, and you're seeing kind of what pushes them over the edge into something more in their adult lives. And the catalyst for what pushes them over the edge romantically is one of the most hilarious scenes in a romance that I've read. I don't want to spoil it for you though. This is just what I look for in a friends to lovers romance. One of our main characters is a famous social media influencer, and the other is like very successful in her career, but she's a little bit more introverted. But the way that they match each other is just beautiful. There's self-discovery in this book, there's pining, there are all these like very romantic swoony moments, and there's spice that was also really good, but their friendship and just the depth of how much they care and understand about each other is really what makes this one so special. Next, I'm gonna recommend The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren, but first I need to talk about The Soulmate Equation, also by Christina Lauren. These are technically companion novels, so The Soulmate Equation comes first. You can read these separately, but this one is going to give you a little bit of context for the kind of pseudo-science that these two books revolve around. And this is a romance between the founder of a company that has invented this kind of technology that's sort of like 23andMe, where you send in your DNA, but instead of like figuring out your family tree, you're getting matched with people who are like genetically compatible with you in a romantic sense. And your matches can range from anything from like just compatible to like the highest, most rare tier, which they call the diamond tier. And of course, our main character ends up sending in her DNA, and she ends up matched to the founder of the company at the diamond tier. And they end up fake dating for publicity reasons, because it would look really good for his company if the founder had a diamond match. And I think he helps her out like financially. But both of them are kind of unconvinced of this match because of a previous encounter that they had. I think I gave this one 4 stars. My favorite, however, was the next book, The True Love Experiment. This one is kind of like The Bachelorette, if The Bachelorette were matched with all these potential matches using the technology from this book, and if The Bachelorette ended up falling in love with the showrunner instead. Our MMC in this book ends up meeting this woman in a bar who ends up being his ex-wife's favorite romance author, and he's so captivated by her that he ends up creating an entire show around her. But of course, this backfires when he ends up having feelings for the lead in his show. But yeah, Christina Lauren books are historically a bit hit or miss for me, but I think this is the only one I've ever given 5 stars to. Next is another kind of companion series that can be read either together or on their own. And I have When in Rome by Sarah Adams and Practice Makes Perfect. Practice Makes Perfect is my favorite, but I'm gonna talk about the first one, When in Rome. This one follows a very famous pop star who needs a break and then ends up breaking down in front of this conveniently attractive small town baker's house. He lets her stay with him while she kind of gets herself together. This one definitely has that charming small town feel. He's a baker, so of course he feeds her lots of baked goods. It's got that big city girl in a small town Hallmark kind of charm, and it was very cute. But my favorite was Practice Makes Perfect. This one follows the sister of the baker in the last book, and she is kind of like the small town golden girl. She owns a flower shop, and she is kind of seen as this innocent golden girl character, and because of this she doesn't have a lot of confidence when it comes to dating, and conveniently the pop star from the first book ends up lending her very tattooed, very bad boy ladies man bodyguard to help give Annie some dating lessons. It's very cute. Sarah Adams books are always closed door spice, but they still have a lot of tension and yearning in them. They don't feel like they're lacking anything in my opinion, but they're perfect for that small town sickly sweet fluffy vibe. Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young is one of my favorite romances of all time. If you have not read this one yet, what are you doing? This needs to be your next read. Yes, this is the accidental pregnancy trope, but in the best way. It's done in the most sickeningly sweet and cozy way, and the moment that Beau, our MMC, finds out that he's gonna be a dad is just one of the top 10 sweetest moments in a romance ever. This has disability rep as well, and it follows Wynn and Beau, who have a one-night stand. Their meet cute at a Halloween party is also hilarious. I won't spoil that either because you have to read it. But Wynn was born with a small hand and Beau has a prosthetic leg. But this story is ultimately two characters who have been through so much trauma individually coming together to just really support each other in the best ways. They are just exactly what each other needs without having to ask for it. And some of the most standout moments to me in this book were just these very mundane small moments. Like there's a point when they're listening to the radio in the car and they both just start singing the same jingle at the same time, and they just go along with each other's bits. Beau really anticipates her needs. It's just a true puzzle piece romance. It's not grand or dramatic in any way, it just feels right, you know? But it's also still swoony and spicy at the same time, and I love the duality, you know? Next we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. If you've read an Emily Henry book before, you know that they come with a lot of depth, and most of them I definitely would not classify as fluffy. This one is the fluffiest of her books. It's the most humorous in terms of tone and has the most like rom-com vibes out of her books, but it still definitely packs an emotional punch. So this is the best friends to lovers trope, but flipped, and it follows the two people who were dumped in the aftermath of the two best friends realizing that they're meant to be together. So when they're both blindsided by their two fiancés running off together, they end up having to move in together. Miles, our MMC, is kind of an unconventional main character, and I love that about him. He's a little bit messy, he doesn't really have everything together, but neither does Daphne. She is coming off of what she's now realizing was a very codependent relationship, and a lot of this book is really her trying to find who she is outside of that, and Miles really gives her the space to do that while being supportive of her. This also has a really sweet friendship element to it, and like I said before, the overall tone in this book is very humorous, but it's still got that emotional depth and character development and romantic development that you would expect from an Emily Henry novel. Next, I'm recommending two authors, Kels and Denise Stone. They are friends that write books together, I believe. Specifically, I'm recommending their series called the Perks and Benefits series. I think I've read all of their books that they've put out except for one, but I'm gonna tell you about the Perks and Benefits series because I think it's really good. It starts with Water Under the Bridge, which is a workplace rivals romance between an environmentalist and a corporate lawyer. The second one is called Our Scorching Summer. This is kind of their more summery romance, but this is a romance between a tech billionaire and his brother's fiance's best friend who he has a thing for, and he spontaneously invites her to go travel the world during the summer with him when he finds out that she's kind of down on her luck career-wise. And this one is really fun and very spicy. My favorite, however, is the third one called On Cloud 9. This one's a fake dating romance between a rich heiress and a tech entrepreneur. She's trying to escape an arranged marriage, and he ends up offering to pretend like he's her fake fiance to get her parents off her back. I just think that their romances are this perfect blend of like fun and lighthearted banter, and then also very healthy communicative relationships. And a lot of their books don't include an unnecessary third act breakup, which I personally really like. Then I'm gonna recommend another series, but only two books from the series, the Lovelight Farm series by B.K. Boreson. This is a small town cozy romance series, and each of the books in the series represents a different season. I'm gonna recommend you the spring and summer books because I think that makes the most sense for this video. However, every single one of the books in this series is 4 stars or above for me. But I have Mixed Signals, which I think is the summer book, and In the Weeds, which I think is the spring book. They're not like overtly seasonal except for maybe Lovelight Farms, which is the Christmas book. So really you can read them any time of the year. But this series is a small town cozy romance series that follows all of these friends that work on a tree farm together. The first one is Mixed Signals. This one follows Layla, who is the baker on the farm, and Theo, who she runs into at a tiki bar one night. He's one of her like very loyal customers, but she's never really noticed him before. But they end up running into each other at this tiki bar and kind of start talking about their like mutual romantic woes. And they agree to date each other for a month to kind of evaluate each other and how they are in relationships, because he's very insecure that he's too much in relationships, and she's never dated what he considers to be a good guy before, so he wants to kind of show her what a good guy looks like in a relationship. Kind of a silly plot, but it's very cute. And then we have In the Weeds, which follows Evelyn and Beckett. They had a one-night stand like a year or two ago when she was on vacation. She's a social media influencer who previously did a story on their farm, and she's feeling very burnt out. And when she's trying to think of the last place she really felt happy, she remembers Lovelight Farms, and she decides to spontaneously take a trip. And of course, when she gets there, she's told that there is nowhere available to stay, so she ends up having to stay with Beckett in his farmhouse. This one's just very charming. Beckett is addicted to rescuing animals, so there's like ducks roaming around, and then at one point he tries to adopt like a horse or something. These are spicy, but they're not like overtly so in my opinion. Overall cutesy vibe. Next, I'm gonna quickly recommend the Improbable Meet Cute series on Kindle Unlimited. So this is a series of Valentine's Day themed novellas, all written by some of the most popular romance authors right now. They're definitely nothing super memorable or life-changing, but if you're just looking for something cute and sweet, short and sweet, to maybe bump up your reading goal a little bit, I think these are really fun. The Christina Lauren and Abby Jimenez ones were my favorites. The Christina Lauren one has kind of a pen pal element, and the Abby Jimenez one has like an anonymous acts of kindness thing going on when she finds a Valentine's Day letter taped to her car after a really bad day at work. Like I said, they're nothing life-changing or super memorable, but they're all like less than 200 pages, super easy to get through, and they're cute. Then we have Elsie Silver. Everyone and their mother has read the Chestnut Springs series, and her new series that's out right now, Wild Love and Wild Eyes. I'm gonna recommend her Gold Rush Ranch series, which was, I think, her first series. It's also cowboy romance vibes, but I think this one needs more love because I think I had like 3 of these that I gave 5 stars to. This is an interconnected romance series where you can read them out of order or you can read them in order. It doesn't follow siblings like the Chestnut Springs books do, but it does follow all of these people that are all connected to this horse ranch, and it's very much still found family. The first book, Off to the Races, kind of kickstarts all of it. It follows Billy, who's this very loud, very confident horse trainer. She ends up getting hired by Vaughn to save his family's horse ranch. She's a horse trainer, and when she shows up, she ends up being a woman, which surprises him, I guess. Her name's Billy, so he thought he was hiring a man. And of course, this is really inconvenient because she's a very attractive, very confident woman. My favorite in the series, however, is the second book, A Photo Finish. This one follows a former soldier who used to anonymously online date this girl who he followed on this app that's like an OnlyFans. And one day they realize that they are working together on this ranch, and that very much surprises both of them. I also really like the third one, which follows this very misunderstood rival ranch owner who everyone thinks is a villain because he's super rich and they all think that he doesn't actually care about horses, and a veterinarian who he calls to the ranch to help him out with his horses. But if you haven't read an Elsie Silver book before, you're really missing out. She does cowboy romances really, really well. She also just writes some of the best spice. Just a top tier romance author right now. She's popular for a reason. Next we have one that is probably a little bit less known. It's on Kindle Unlimited and it's called Make It Sweet by Kristen Callahan. I picked this up a few years ago, but what I remember most is that this follows a Hollywood TV actress whose career is kind of falling apart, her relationship is falling apart, and she escapes to this like very bougie California estate where this ex-hockey player who secretly wants to be a baker is working, and he very much has a thing for feeding her sweets. It's got that trope where he's like trying to figure out the perfect sweet that embodies her. I just love that for some reason. I don't know what it is. Lastly, I'm gonna recommend 2 Ashley Poston books. So the first one I used to think was more of a fall romance because of the cover, but I have The Dead Romantics. This one is actually set in the springtime and it's got very whimsical vibes. It's got a magical realism element that all of her books have. But this one follows Florence, who's a ghostwriter for this famous romance author, and she's got this new editor, but one day she gets a call that her father has passed away and she has to go home to her small town and her family's funeral home that they own. And when she's there, curiously, her new editor ends up showing up on her porch, but surprise, he's a ghost now. And she was kind of run out of her hometown before for being able to talk to ghosts, and she was kind of outcasted because of that and something else that happened in her past. I think this is my favorite out of her books. I love getting to see Florence deal with all of her ghosts, pun intended, physically, emotionally, professionally, and romantically. The story deals with grief in a really unique way, but I think the whimsical element in this kind of makes it feel just a bit more fluffy to me. And then lastly, The 7-Year Slip. This also has a magical realism element to it, but this one follows Clementine, who has just inherited the apartment of her late aunt. And one day she walks into her apartment and this guy's there who says that he's been subletting the apartment for the summer 7 years ago. And it turns out all of these stories that her aunt used to tell her about the magical apartment that could slip back and forth in time were true. It's also got that element of whimsy to it. He's also a chef, and something I'm realizing is I apparently really like books with like chefs and bakers. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found something in here that maybe you've heard about before and I just gave you a little extra motivation to read it, or something that you haven't heard before. Either way, I hope you got something out of this video. Or if you've read these before, leave a comment telling me what you thought about them and which one was your favorite. Bye guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, please consider subscribing so that we can continue to hang out. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. It is a small town cozy romance series that please hold.